We imagine reality to be colourful because we know life is not black and white. Colour illuminates the path by providing a map of consciousness through energising us so we can experience the unseen world and embody all of who we are becoming.
So today on the show, on the Colourful Conversations podcast, we are joined by Paolo Morley-Fletcher. Now, Paolo would describe himself as a strategist, an executive coach, and a seeker on the path. And he is passionate about driving cultural change and leadership transformation in organizations to reinvent them, in fact, and society as a whole. Now, he has 20 years of hands-on experience of working with multinational companies across the globe. These days, as the creator of the Atman Way and a tool known as wisdom dialoguing, his real focus and passion is supporting leaders to reconnect back with themselves so that they can transform, embrace change, grow consciously. And he brings together, I think, a personal interest, in fact, in spirituality, in the wisdom traditions, and philosophy. So it's all immersed in the work that he does today, utilizing mind, body, and heart practices. Paolo, we're delighted to have you on the episode today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for your kind words of introduction.
So when Kate and I were researching you and looking at your particular website, we were fascinated by this work because for us, we perceive it really gets to the heart of the matter. And I guess before we get into how you do what you do, we're interested to know what got you to here, because we sense that there's probably been a bit of a journey in terms of your own evolution and why you're now doing the work you're doing in the world. So can we start there?
Absolutely, yeah. So what got me here? Well, I think it has to do with an increasing sense that our mission in life and the art in life is about integrating opposites rather than separating. Opposite dimensions, or at least dimensions that appear as opposites. And as you said at the beginning, I've been spending quite a big portion of my working life in corporate as a strategy consultant. And over the years, realizing that, particularly in the corporate world, there's a tendency to polarize. There's a tendency to look at one angle that only represents a part of what life is. And discovering that there's a lot of things that are not taken into account, that pertain more to the invisible world or the intangible world. And so in my journey and my career as a strategy consultant, I discovered that there was a beautiful place where I found myself very much at ease and willing to evolve there, that had to do with how we can help organizational culture to evolve. And culture being one of the three major components that oftentimes is neglected, but that can make or break a company. As typically, the corporate world tends to focus more on, let's say, if we look at three major bubbles or three major circles, that companies typically tend to focus a lot or recognize as the importance of focusing on business strategy as the direction where companies should go. Then they realize there's something that needs to be put in place in terms of a machine or an organization and operating model that needs to help achieve that strategy. But oftentimes, at least until a few years ago, they tended to neglect an important piece that is the heart of the organization, which is culture. And I see leadership as the art of integrating these dimensions and acting as a glue that holds and aligns together these three pieces: strategy, operating model, and culture. That to me also refers to the ability we have to integrate our three intelligences: the head, the heart, and the hands. And so it is in that integration that I feel that we are all called to embrace and invited to go in these times, to integrate, to heal our fragmented world. And so the work that I do has moved progressively more and more towards that place of integration, and trying to blend things together, and make sure that our three intelligences, if you like, align, and create consistency in what we do, think, and feel. As in the world, there's a lot of incoherence. And I see that with lots of clients I've worked with in the past, and organizations, but also institutions, where maybe there are situations where we say something, we may think slightly different things, although we try to express things in a way that is very convincing, and we are dissociated with our feelings, and at the same time, we act in a different way. So how to bring those three elements, our thinking, our feeling, and our acting, align is crucial. So a lot of what I do these days has to do with bringing that alignment to ultimately illuminate and elevate wisdom in our world. And maybe I'll pause here.
Nicely put. No easy task, though.
No. No, and yet each and every one of us can make a contribution, can make a difference. So
I'm curious about one thing. It's just the way my mind works, really, because you talked about head, heart, and hands. And if I was talking about the three intelligences, I mean, I think there are probably more than that anyway, but, if we were limiting it to three, I would talk about the head, the heart, and the gut. So I'm curious as to why you chose the hands rather than the gut.
Yeah, there are various reasons. One, which is very trivial, I like that all the three words start with the same letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Duration, yeah, I get that.
and also the fact that for me, the hands speak also about grasping, about shaping, about and we could speak about the hands and the feet and the rest of the body, right? But those parts of our body that are sensing also into the world and trying to touch the world, by touching it, try to co-create with it. But we are speaking about the same thing. So these three intelligences that more and more we recognize having a significant contribution to our whole mind-body intelligence, and also having even a larger frequency or a larger potency than just our heads or our brain being more than just our head. And so we all know that the heart has a larger capacity, I think 60,000 times stronger than the head in terms of synaptics. And so are guts. So in that respect, the more we are open to those intelligences, and I'm totally with you that these are three, as a way to simplify the complexity or the beauty of our system, right? We go into several other centers of energy that present in many wisdom traditions that somehow represent our ability to be in exchange with the world, how we gather information, how we project information from our system. So in being in a dialogue, actually, in receiving and giving.
I mean, when you look at culture, where you made this reference to how it can make or break a business. And I know that when I was in consulting, this idea of you can walk into a room and you can feel and sense whether a team is off and flat. You can just you know the energy, you know, and it's, I think what you're alluding to with all of this, is getting right into the heart of that, into the sense of actually at that deep level, we know what's the right thing to do, or we know or have a sense that something's off, but it's to what degree we're allowing that to come through us and we're allowing to express that. And in order for that to take shape, we have to know ourselves, right? Or we have to be in this authentic way of being for that to materialize, for us to find different solutions to how we connect with one another and what we then bring forth in the world.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I just like what you're sharing, because when I start fully devoting on culture as a way to accelerate business transformations, and really helping tap into the power of the human behaviors and mindsets, and literally the results that are made in a company are made by people, and those people are driven by feelings, emotions, fears, and they are then embodied by behaviors, right? And so for me, it was a beautiful way to recognize that culture is absolutely about speaking about the intangible energy that operates within a system. And it's a safe word in the corporate world language. So not speaking about energy, but actually it is so intangible that it's palpable, and yet at the same time not necessarily so visible, right? And so we are now moving into the invisible realm of a company, and how that can be significantly affecting the results of whatever endeavors the company is focusing on.
Sabotaging. So I'm really intrigued, because you've got such a lovely cultural background, and as the linguist that you are, and you've traveled, what do you notice, let's say, from perhaps more the Southern European cultures in their way of being, in their leadership, in how they drive change, vis-a-vis an American and Northern European way of being? Do you notice more of the expression of feeling in the business, or would you say it's much the same?
Well, I think there's a distinction first to be made between local cultures and corporate cultures. These are typically two aspects that are exchanging information. Sometimes the local cultures create stereotypes or cliche, and definitely speaks about some common traits that people with the same nationality or live in the same place may share, and that may impact the way of working. But when I'm speaking about culture, and company culture is more the way of doing things within a system, and that is a result of mindsets, behaviors, values, and many other underlying system. But to answer your question, definitely there's a shift geographically in how the more local cultures are impacting the way of working. And we could refer to a shift from the head, from the hands or the body up to the head. So where there are some geographies that are more attuned with the heart expressing emotions, or even being more pragmatic or wanting to immediately move into action. And those who are more reflective, or trying to be more sharp in the heads. But I think each intelligence has its own strengths, and if it is polarized, then it may create weaknesses. But I think we live in a world that across all geographies, there's oftentimes a tendency to, particularly in the corporate world, to give so much emphasis on the head and on the hands.
Yeah.
seeing the head as the only repository of knowledge and wisdom, and seeing the hands or the urge to move into action. And sometimes we move into action even not knowing where we're going, but just for the sake of doing something or for showing that we are making things happen. And if we only see at these two sides of the spectrum and missing the heart as the ability to, again, bridge and integrate, little wisdom will be brought to the table. And little reorientation will also happen, and little awakening, a little transformation will derive. Mm. So not sure how much I'm answering your question, but I see that everywhere there's an awakening. And that awakening, we could say maybe in a quite simplistic way, that has to do with opening the heart and recognizing the heart as the place where we integrate the vertical and the horizontal, the doing, which is for me is more the horizontal, and that has so much pervaded our culture at large, with the being, the more deep spiritual dimension. And those two major axes, if you like, the horizontal and the vertical, integrate and meet at the heart level. Is in that space that we hold the capacity to, we have the capacity to really hold whatever is emerging may emerge and be with that.
It's that, I don't know, I listened to this somewhere, but the true meaning, right, of the cross, think, feel, act, and, receiving and giving, the masculine and the feminine coming together in perfect harmony, and the cross right across, no surprises there, the heart chakra, because that's where
beautiful
transformation takes place.
Yeah, and I think that the cross is a beautiful symbol which has been so much associated, and I mean,
sacrifice,
particularly when in some countries they are very much affected by the national religions, if you like. That's much associated with religion, but actually is a very ancient symbol that speaks about integration in the end, right?
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
So I guess where that takes me a little bit, I'm still curious, because you said, am I answering your questions? And in a way, it doesn't really matter what we say. It's a bit like when Kath was asking you about national cultures, versus the South and the North. It's almost irrelevant because those are all labels, aren't they? And we kind of get attached to the label, and then we kind of find meaning through that. So, and that was what I felt you were saying when you were talking about you sort of seeing all these little awakenings all over the place. And where I was curious was the first question Kath asked you is, well, what was your journey, or where have you come from? And you gave us a really good description or about the journey of your work, but not about yourself. And I thought that's quite a masculine or male thing to do. So I'm going to pin you down and say, not just.
All the time, Paolo.
I'm curious, but I think also it's the way that if we're talking about heart intelligence, how does connection work? It's through connecting to the energy of someone and what they're about, and and often we take the safe option, don't we? We hide behind our work and let that speak for us, but we want to see the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's more the vulnerable place, you like. Maybe I'm speaking of work partially because I'm a man, and so I'm hiding that, but also because a lot of what I'm doing now, I'm trying to bring into the work deep feelings and deep realization. So trying to manifest that into what I'm doing and bring it to the world. My journey, not sure we have enough time, but I'll try to be concise. But it's, where can I start? But maybe I'll start from a very deep and vulnerable place, which is that of what I was dreaming of becoming when I was a child. And not sure whether I'll like this to be put into the recording, but we can test that afterwards. But when I was probably around 4 or 6, I remember very vividly that my dream job at the time, when I was having conversations with other kids, who maybe they wanted to become a policeman or, I don't know, an air pilot, At that time, my recollection of it was that I wanted to become a saint.
Mm.
And so I've been dealing with that inner ambition or vision for the last 40 plus years.
Mm.
And being with that vision, if you like, has been a tough one, because as much as I was very clear at that age, that vision somehow got started to flake, start to be questioned, start to not finding connection or correspondence in the world. And so a lot of things that then I tried to move towards, I realized somehow were answering that question, and realizing that maybe what I meant at the time as a saint was someone who was wise. And so was someone who could share pieces of advice. And so maybe was an advisor, a consultant, right? So I was trying to meet ends and try to see, okay, how that saint, if it is not what we think of a saint, what else could be embodied? And so it took me a long, long journey to then reconnect with what I meant with the metaphor of a saint, which partially maybe influenced by the idea of saints in Italy, and thinking of, in Italy, many names, but everywhere, somehow are associated with saints. In my case, Paolo and St. Paul. I'm not particularly religious. I'd say I'm more spiritual than religious. But at the time, I don't know. So I tried to walk away from that thing, but then realized some years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, that what I meant with the word saint at the time was the idea of a knight on a horse traveling in remote areas of the world, connecting with people more from the heart level, having a sword, so protecting them. And in my lonely ride, somehow feeling the connection with the horse, at the same time with a higher connection with the greater consciousness, and somehow being in dialogue and being in connection with that. So the moment I found ways to decode that metaphor this way, resonated with many other things I was doing.
Was that also giving you the courage then to move into a space where it felt, to a degree, safe around being more of that authentic you, bringing that work into the world?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that was also accompanied by working a lot on self-development, and my side on exploring the world of coaching, life coaching, executive coaching, and doing several trainings there, and spending quite some time there. But again, we go back to the heart. We go back to what do we carry inside that wants to be seen? And I think we all strive and seek to see and be seen.
Yeah.
And when we feel seen, we feel recognized. We are encouraged to see ourselves for who we are, and carry that gift that we have inside to the world.
Yeah.
And until that happens, we shy away, we hide. And by hiding, we hide ourselves and what we carry inside. And I've always been touched by this beautiful passage in the Gospel of Thomas that says, if you bring forth what is within you will save you. If you don't bring forth what is within you will destroy you. And so somehow that speaks to the mission we have to express our soul, express our gift. And if we postpone doing that, we die.
Yeah.
And so there's this invitation to really go within and tap into what we carry in this life and what's our mission and what's our dream, as grand as the dream may be. Or maybe as difficult the dream may be to be explained to others in a way that is acceptable. But rather than trying to explain to others, we need to first find ways to understanding it, being more than understanding, being with it, and let it speak to us.
We're aligned, Paolo, because Kate and I used to have, we had 8 principles. In fact, we talk about it in the book, actually, our Colourful Conversations book, Colourful Boardroom, should I say. That's the book.
I was going to say.
Wrong Colourful Conversations. Yeah, but the book where we highlight about all the voices in the system need to be seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
But that's the true transformation to come through. And I love what you were saying there, because you're really talking about the needs of the soul. And when we start to really understand the needs of the soul, it's about our desires to potentialize ourselves, that person we're becoming. And fine, if we don't get there, we don't get there. But actually, we go through periods of sadness and grief for the loss of that, you know? Whereas the ego, it's more driving away from the fear that we hold, that's stopping or blocking. But yeah, the sadness is a big one when we can't live what is deep within us and what wants to come through.
And as you say that, Kath, what I was reminded of, and you quoted scripture yourself, Paolo, and I would agree with you. I certainly consider myself spiritual rather than religious. And yet there are some, it's a living word, isn't it, in a way? But the quote, I think it's in Matthew, it says something like, many are called, but few are chosen, and even fewer say yes to the call. And it feels that's what you're speaking to when you were sharing that. And we've lost some of that, really, because also what I heard you say, although you didn't exactly say that, the inner journey is a pretty lonely one. And we have to do that work ourselves in a way in order to then come back, a bit like the hero's journey or what have you, but then to come back into the world to share. But that's the hard part, because, we get sort of stuck in the distractions or, the other stuff. We're in this world, but we're not of this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the loneliness piece is something that I've definitely seen and touched myself.
Yeah.
And there are moments where I do feel lonely, and yet other times where maybe I'm feeling more positive about it. I realize there are many other people that with whom we share the same journey, so we're not lonely. And also realizing that moving from the visible into the invisible world, going back to that metaphor, there's a moment in that transition where it feels lonely. But the moment that you're tapping into this larger world, and I remember in the book we also speak a lot about nature, we are very much into interconnecting to a web of life. And so the moment we're capable of entering that space and seeing the world as not being distant, but as being interconnected with us, we realize we're not lonely at all.
It's the remembering, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
so one of
the beauty in everything, as opposed to seeing what's missing.
Yeah, and just having gone through a bit through your book, speaking about beauty, I think that engaging with beauty, and in other words, also engaging with colors, allows us to move into that space, allows us to see the multiple perspectives and diversity of our universe, and appreciate that. And that appreciation comes also the invitation to show and really bring out our inner beauty, our soul. And maybe there was something that you were speaking of about religion and spirituality. I think a lot of the awakening that is coming, and I see it with clients at work, with organizations, in the dialogues I'm in, has to do with realizing that there's so much human tendency to divide rather than integrate. But in the end, there are moments when we realize that we are part of a larger field, and that we are we're living on one planet, one land. We are one people rather than multiple peoples. And we have only one spirituality, that of being human, and one language, really. Because we are divided by many local languages, but at the end, there's a human language that we all share. And the human language is a language that has to do with speaking out our heart, and letting our emotions also color the words that we use, right? And exchange our feelings, exchange our thoughts, exchange our diversity, knowing that we're all doing that and dancing together and co-creating together at the same time.
Yes, life is a dance. And I like that analogy. And what I was reminded of as you shared that, which was really beautiful, by the way, is I can't remember where this was from, but talking to someone, and they were had an evening somewhere, and they were just on their own with the father of a friend or something, who didn't speak their language. He didn't speak his language, and the two of them had the most beautiful, exquisite evening sharing a meal, because they didn't need words. They spoke with their hearts effectively, and he still remembers this sort of years later as one of the most amazing evenings of his life.
Yeah, beautiful. Yesterday, I was in a dialogue where something beautiful emerged that speaks to that. It really speaks to the power and the limit of words. So to some extent, words, it is what differentiates us from other, I wouldn't use the word races, but other, from animals, for instance, or from plants. We use words. And at the same time, words make us feel that we are different, that we are superior, and that we somehow can have power over these other dimensions. So looking that way, words is also what creates this connection between us and nature, us and animals. And at the same time polarizes us in thinking that we can only express through words. And the more articulated we are, the more power we have, right? The more ability we have to use a vocabulary that is wide with our words, the more effective we are.
Yeah.
But in doing that only, we disconnect with other languages we can use, and that allow us to communicate with what's around us. And so you can surely relate to the ability to communicate, at least to some level, to some extent, with animals, or just recognizing or the beauty in nature and realizing that makes you smile. And that smiling, there's a communication exchange. And so, and that can go even further than that, right? So again, speaking about going back to the idea of a common language that we all share as humans, but also as sentient beings.
I think that's one of the reasons we love colour, isn't it, Kath? Because you know, we always say that when you pick one of the bottles that we work with, you're not picking with your head, it's your soul, because the soul goes, wow, that's the colour I need right now. You know, whether you call it the soul or the higher self, it doesn't really matter. And so it helps us to connect to the essence of who we are. And what's really interesting, you know, and we found this, didn't we, when we're working in organizations, that when you start to bring that in, they say, oh, we're having conversations. We don't really know how we came to this place or how we're able to have these conversations, because the energy enables, and there's nothing we have to do. I mean, you know, we're holding the space as facilitators, but it just supports that process of letting go or relaxing into that more beingness that you spoke about earlier.
And in some regards, I think that's what I'm interested to hear more about. Share with us, Paolo, how the wisdom dialoguing works and why it gets the results it gets. Because I think there's probably an overlap in that regard from the work we do with color.
Yeah. So I'll go there in a minute. I just want to make a comment regarding colors. I think what colors, for me, what is beautiful about colors is that color somehow speaks to different frequencies. Because each color carries light and carries a different frequency of light.
Yeah. And
so just in that, it has the capacity to shift things or just to bring different perspectives. Is in that opening to multiple perspectives when we get fully alive and we appreciate the beauty as being a multiverse of perspectives. So that, and speaking about the wisdom dialogue, again, trying to essence the essence of it. I think the journey to entering that realm where we feel we are more interconnected, for me, starts with silence.
Okay.
And starts with going within, trying to seek that gift or rediscover the gift we have. And that journey starts within. The journey starts with really just being in silence, letting silence take us somewhere, and let silence speak to us. In that silence, a dialogue begins. Really a dialogue with life. The wisdom dialogue movement that I initiated some years ago starts with the mission of Atman Way, the company, to integrate strategy, wisdom, and action to facilitate growth and change in leaders, organizations, society at large. And those three words, strategy, wisdom, and action, are carefully chosen, knowing at the same time that they carry a lot of meaning and that they carry different definitions. But fundamentally, for me, strategy, after having spent so many years in strategy, has to do with summarizing, has to do with condensing and going to the essence, to what really matters. So really essencing and focusing. In wisdom, the definition I give to wisdom is the ability that we all possess to see within, through, and beyond what is merely visible, and then bridge the visible with the invisible. And that is a capacity that we all have. Some of us are paying more attention to that and developing it, but it's all available. And so an action is the ability to really integrate and embody our thoughts, choices, and decisions into concrete actions to manifest and in an aligned and coherent way. So wisdom for me is not knowledge. Knowledge is more a linear accumulation of experiences over time, oftentimes very much based on the past. And is more horizontal in that way, so in a horizontal timeline. Whereas wisdom is more non-linear, and it's sensing into the ability to sense into what wants to emerge, what wants to be served, what wants to emerge and be served through us. And it's non-linear. It has to do more with the vertical dimension.
Yeah.
And it also goes beyond time and space, and allows us to tap also sometimes more into the future and lead from the future rather than lead from the past.
Yeah.
And the way for me to enter silence, so enter wisdom, starts with silence. So that is the first step. And so some years ago, I felt really the invitation to initiate this movement. And I can speak more about that, but it's ultimately a movement that tries to create a space that is informed by silence. It is sourced out of wisdom to activate a new dialogue for humanity, and a dialogue for humanity that will hopefully allow us to move into a collective and united action. And in that action, integrate rather than separate, and ultimately bring peace. And we've been conducting several events. There are some more global big events, such as the one which is upcoming the end of June, on June 24th. We call it the Wisdom Dialogue Day. And we've been hosting Wisdom Dialogue Days every year on the 24th of June for the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a monthly practice that occurs every month. And we're taking also the Wisdom Dialogue movement into other sectors, in education, in schools in India, with trying to have kids and youngsters connect with wisdom keepers and debate and be dialogue about wisdom. And in the science sectors, we have several activities. And that dialogue, again, oftentimes dialogue is confused with conversations or with discussions. But if discussion speaks more about being in a concussion, being in a fight, or where I have to win over you, and conversation is more about going in circles, trying to find the right verse, if you like, the right way. Dialogue comes from the Greek, as you know, dialogos, so which again speaks about going within and through and beyond the logos, the implicate order of things. And in those dialogues, there are several people get together, and it's not me speaking or you speaking, it's we speaking out what we feel that wants to be merged and wants to come to the surface. And just a beautiful way of being together, feeling that interconnection, but also awakening to a new way of seeing the world.
And what comes to me when you've been talking, Paolo, about all of this is where you started. And it's through that journey that you've been able to really tap into that creative resourcefulness and to integrate all those different facets of yourself, the philosopher and the spiritual and the strategist, and really all coming together, right, in perfect union to kind of make a difference and affect change it's a more subtle way, but obviously it's kind of really hitting home because it's helping, other people reconnect back in with themselves in such a beautiful way. So thank you for the work you're doing in the world. It's really important.
Yeah.
Thank you. You are too kind. It's a journey, and I'm learning every day.
Always.
And very oftentimes I stumble. So, but definitely trying to bring all the pieces together, all the colors together, in and letting that rainbow be there and bridge earth and sky.
Yeah. I know where you're going to go now.
I had a sense when Kate and I were talking earlier in the week, and I said, I wonder what kind of conversation we're going to have with Paolo. And I suppose this is my intuitive intelligence tapping in. I said, I think we're going to have a magenta conversation. And when you think about the magenta for us, magenta represents the soul. It's the reawakening, the awakening. So whether you want to talk about that in the collective sense, the collective is awakening to something more, or the individual sense of the soul is needing to move to that next level of who it's becoming, of what its needs and desires are. So I really do think that we've been having a rather extraordinary magenta conversation today, interspersed with lots of other colours, of course. just want to get that in for the colour tribe.
But it's also there's aspects of it, I think, as well. You talked about the loneliness, and within magenta is the container. So if you think about it like a plant pot or a garden, where the soil looks barren, but actually the seed's been planted and it takes time for it to grow and, emerge into the whatever beautiful thing it is going to be. So there's that aspect of it too. And we talk about it being the alpha and the omega, because it's at the beginning of the journey and the end of the journey. And it's really interesting because Kath knows this because we were talking about it in a way yesterday, but quite a few people, I include myself, have been going through what we call that liminal space territory, the space between the stories, which is a very disconcerting space to be in because one doesn't know what wants to emerge yet or unfold, and one has to be with it all and see.
Yeah, for me, when you speak about the liminal space, it's a space that we are, I think, as humanity, invited more and more to go into, to recognize there's actually to really go beyond the dualism and trying to see the oneness.
Yeah.
So not separating, and in that liminal space, actually is that in between space between, again, like the visible and the invisible. And the more we can be in that space without fear, with all our senses, the more we can be in both places at the same time, and really have our feet on the ground, on the earth, but also stretching out to the sky. And in that, there's a connection, right? And bring the two things together. For me, the liminal space is also a space that invites me into my sensory organs, into sensing rather than understanding, into sensing rather than just feeling, but it's to trying to tender and even melt my heart to somehow open to sense into what's happening. And that is a beautiful experience we can have every time we are in nature. Because when we are in nature, we are somehow in that liminal space where things that we are so familiar with starts to be replaced with things that are more, brings up our curiosity, right? In all the different patterns that nature has, with all the beautiful colors that nature offers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been having a lot of conversations with individuals this week, particularly around this whole area of not getting too caught up with identifying too much with who we think we be. So, again, if we allow ourselves more to step into this space and in the non-judgment, just what wants to come through and to allow and to just be with that without, as I say, this distraction of wanting to label it, name it, jump into something else, then that in that emergent space, possibility unfolds. But it's staying still long enough, isn't it? And being silent enough to allow all to unfold and to see the gift that presents.
Yeah, and as you speak, I think that absolutely there's an invitation of not identifying ourselves with what we should be, particularly what others think we should be and become. And two other reflections. One is that the liminal space for me is also fascinating, because if we see at this life, I mean, what would change if we were to see this life as a liminal space in between lifetimes, as being a transition place from another experience we might have had in another life and the next experience we're going to have in another life. And so really seeing that way for me brings lightness and light.
Yeah.
And also this notion of being on a journey, of being on an adventure, where we get to learn new things, we get to heal things that needs to be healed, and we somehow advance on a journey. And one of the things that we've also been doing over the last years is a program that is called Soul Leadership Journey. and that is a program that blends these two big words that seem to be belonging to opposite worlds, soul and leadership. But it speaks to first our definition of leadership, and then try also to bridge with other dimensions. And maybe I'll just speak to that for just 2 minutes. One is we are so cooked up in the idea that leadership is about a leader and a group of followers. So there's someone who's elected to lead and govern, and all the others just are sheep following, right? Yeah. And that is so much obsolete, and just an angle of leadership, the angle of influencing, of motivating, right? But for me, that comes also, leadership is ultimately realizing that in order to lead, we are the first one to follow. And what is it that we have to follow as leaders, really at the end, ultimately? And for me, that thing that we follow ultimately is our soul, is our inner compass, our inner guidance. Yeah. And as we develop, we need to develop that ability to listen into ourselves and be able to discern. You've spoken about the ego and the soul, and when the two come together in partnership. Yeah. And so leadership speaks to that ability to tap in to yourself and be able to recognize the gift that you're here to bring, and also the potential that wants to emerge through you and be served through you, and follow that. And as you follow that, you show the way for others to follow the same path. And in doing that, others may be following you. But the first step starts within, rather than just by orienting a group of unaware people.
Yeah. No. I think the word SQ, or spiritual intelligence, is having its moment, and I believe can become, the new intelligence that unfolds, that then encapsulates, all of the emotional intelligence, the physical intelligence, and the intellect, and bringing, as you say, all of those together, because then we're actually working from that place of knowing first, knowing the right thing to do, and being able to follow that no matter what. And then we might have more informed decisions, and those that are made in the betterment of humankind, if that's a word. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe just a further reflection on that. I think that the knowing and unknowing is crucial here, because the sooner we realize there are so many things we don't know and be at ease with that not knowing is where we are asked to go, because so many things are happening right now in the world that are making us see the complexity and the beauty of it, but also we can't control it.
Yeah.
So in that opening to the unknowing, there's this invitation again to dance with what is emerging, and that also realizing that we have our contribution in co-creating, and that one way to be a soul leader, if you like, is to sense in what is being asked by you in that moment, or what is the insight that you have, and follow that insight when it comes. And in that following comes the ends.
Yeah.
So that taking a first step, and that first step may lead to another step. You may not know all the steps that you will be taking from the start, but at least start moving in that aligned direction is key to honoring and start manifesting what you need to bring out into the world.
And in that regard, it's that paradox of the complex and the simple. But you can't follow the simple without kind of going through the maze of the complex and getting to the simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this has been a really beautiful conversation. And so with all conversations like this, it's hard to come to an end. And yet we're sort of almost at that time, really. So I wanted to kind of slightly shift direction. One question we ask people, which we've really enjoyed because the responses have been very unique each time, is in life, as you alluded to with the sort of, when you were talking about sometimes stumbling, and it's not like a linear path or smooth path necessarily. A lot of life is full of ordinary moments, the mundane, and yet there are moments that are extraordinary. And we wondered if you would like to share one or two of your extraordinary moments.
But there are many. First of all, I can't help thinking immediately about my family and being in the beautiful conversations, also sometimes silent conversations with my kids, my wife, my dog. And, so sharing moments, I'd say that it's more about the beauty of sharing moments of time in the presence of others, and in that sharing, touching love and touching the beauty of our life. So there's just a myriad of those, and I feel very privileged. And I think other moments that somehow are related speak to moments where I witnessed the grand beauty of life. For instance, as I'm preparing for this big event, the Wisdom Dialogue Day, I'm reminded of the past events that we held, and moments where we felt ourselves really speaking as one only tribe, the same language, and realizing there are no barriers that divide us, and that we are all very much sharing the same journey, and very much directed towards elevating and illuminating the path. So maybe I'm being a bit vague, but I think there's a beauty that when we connect, as now with you, right? There's a sense of feeling that we belong to the same space, that we are, despite the physical separation that we have, and we are very much enabled here by Zoom, but there's a strong connection.
Beautiful. Thank you. I resonated with that because, as Kath knows, I have a dog and I have many beautiful moments with my Benji every day. He's not in here at the moment because he would want to jump up and say hello. That's perhaps not where we want to go right now. So that really spoke to me. And I think what I'm taking away from our conversation, Paolo, is the importance of silence. Allow that there's a language there. We don't have to fill every moment with a word or go to the next place. So I really appreciate the reminder of that and that sense of because when we're in that space or we're taking our time and we're pausing, we can feel all of the other, if you like, energy, all of the other essences in the space that want to be seen or want to be included. And that's when we receive. So going back to our thing right at the beginning, I think both you and Kath were referring to the giving and receiving, and that is where abundance is, when that is in balance. So we're really grateful for all that you've given us. Also, sort of on a practical thing, where can people find you if they want to, having listened to this, want to reach out and connect with you and find out more about your work and what else is available?
Yeah, probably the easiest would be to go on atmanway.org. And there's a variety of things there. And please feel free to reach out if you feel called or resonate with what we've been sharing.
Thank you. And then our final piece, just to close before we end this, is as you look out from your space, you talked about maybe the whole of this thing called life being a liminal space. But as we kind of take the wider view of, where we are in the world, what's happening, and I have to say I was very excited last night. Sorry, it's a bit of an aside to hear that Trump's been convicted. There's some joy in the world. Anyway, moving on slightly, but that, what's the new that you see unfolding? Because we've talked about, the emergent space and allowing things to unfold. And, we really believe, and we talk about in our book, Colourful Boardrooms, about the new story, and we suggest some ideas around that. And I just wondered, from your perspective and experience of life, what you see, what do you see unfolding in the new story?
So maybe two things come to my awareness. One is that lots of things that are happening right now, I see them as being possibly, hopefully, symptoms of something very wrong becoming very visible.
Yeah.
So obsolete patterns that are somehow coming to the forefront of our consciousness as last, possibly, sparks of fire that wants to be seen, so to move us into shifting. And I see that as the many conflicts that are popping up in the world.
Yeah.
The war, just thinking about the war between Russia and Ukraine, and the war in Gaza.
Yeah.
As something extremely wrong. Or again, fragmentation, polarization, separation, rather than integration, seeing ourselves as being one. And so I have a quite positive attitude towards that, in the sense that with the whole despair, I see that as something that is already filling up the edge, and that it cannot go for longer, because we are all realizing that something can't be wrong if we keep on being in that mindset of wars, exercising power over others.
Yeah.
So this one thing, and the other is having a conversation such as this one, opening up to other dimensions, opening up to the language of the heart or the soul. It's something that I see shifting and being present in a more visible and more invisible way everywhere. And so there's a general awakening, there's a general shifting, and hopefully there'll be a moment where the needle moves in a way that is will allow us not to reverse back to old ways of doing and being.
A great note to leave us on.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for giving us the gift of you and your time. I know I speak for myself. I feel really hopeful as a result of this conversation, and that the joy quotient has increased. So I'm very grateful to you for that. And I'm sure that will be the experience of others as they tune in and tune into the frequency of the conversation.
Keep on doing what you're doing, Paolo. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you to both of you. And thank you for reminding us and bringing up the colors of life. And I love what you spoke about the magenta and just raising our awareness, simply speaking about colors, simply, but it's an art in speaking with simplicity, raises the awareness, raises the frequency, raises the awareness. So, so beautiful. And for me, colors, and also looking at your book, the images present in your book, somehow connects me a lot with fragrances. Because oftentimes, particularly if we think about perfumes or nature, we can smell the colors. And so, again, it's this entire realm that is more impalpable and yet palpable at the same time, that it's a beautiful invitation to see ourselves beyond of just being bodies and opening to our souls.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Magic happens in any given moment. All it takes is us to be aware and present and open to what wants to unfold. Our intention is always to enable you to see more, perceive more, and be more.